Hi everyone, how are you today? I'm just popping on here to share a few new books I've purchased recently. I think my book buying philosophy has changed a bit since doing two very large moves in the last 5 years. One was to a different state and another move was to a different country. And the first time I brought all of my book collection, and the second time I ended up donating a portion of my books before I moved. And between those two experiences, I just don't think I want to own as many books anymore. But I do like to read hard copies and I do like buying books. So I think I'm going back to more library borrowing, but also more secondhand books. So I think all of the books except one I'm going to show you today are secondhand. And I think my mentality is buy more books secondhand and also part with books I don't plan to read a second time, or at least not in the foreseeable future. So between that and the library, I think I can keep my book collection under control. But I am excited to share these books. Some of them I'm reading right now, so I can tell you a little bit about that. The first one here is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. And this is, actually a very beautiful edition by Vintage Classics, but it's one of these where they've partnered with an artist to do different book covers. And you can see some of the other ones here. I actually do own To the Lighthouse and The Waves in the same edition, and I think the art's nice. I think what I really like about this is the form factor. It's a nice little paperback with the French flaps. Very readable, very elegant, and easy to carry with me, which is important. A lot of my reading is on the go now. But I picked this up for another book club I'm doing with some folks this month. I'm about halfway, maybe a little over halfway. And it's about, really, I think it jumps into the minds of several different people in London. This would be kind of right after the Great War. I think this is the 1920s. And it starts out with this lady, Clarissa Dalloway. 1925. Okay, so think Great Gatsby. But this takes place in London, and we meet Mrs. Dalloway, who's getting ready to host a party. But of course, not all is as it seems, and as we get to know her better and some of the other characters in her realm of acquaintances, we find out that things aren't great, actually. There's a lot of reminiscing over the past, over past decisions in life, relationship choices, different people like coming back from the past and reconnecting with Mrs. Dalloway. And I thought this book was going to be a little more structured in terms of following her day. I thought it was going to be just a day in the life of her, but it's actually changed perspective a few times. I say perspective, it's third person, but it really follows the thoughts of individual characters in a very fluid way. This is stream of consciousness. But it's far less structured than To the Lighthouse, and in some ways far less structured than The Waves as well. Even though The Waves is poetry, it had a pretty regular structure and rhythm to it. Not rhythm in terms of rhyming, but just the way it was laid out in the book was pretty consistent. And this book is much more rambly. It's more just jumping from character to character. So I'm intent to try and finish this before Easter. I think I have slowed down a bit in the middle, but there are some interesting things in it. There are some interesting portrayals of, there's one character who suffered from shell shock, and so him and his wife are having marital difficulties. There's Mrs. Dalloway, who's having marital difficulties as well, and kind of reflecting back on why she married the man that she did and other past relationships that she had with men and women. And so that's really kind of the overall gist of this book. Lots of reminiscing. Some of it I don't really follow too well, but then other parts are very gripping and have made me want to research the time period a bit more. So that's Mrs. Dalloway, very distinct in style from the other books of hers that I've read. Very different, but maybe not super my cup of tea, but I I'm finding things to appreciate about it as well. So in the same kind of series, there is another book that I picked up, Quicksand and Passing by Nella Larsen. And this is an American author from also the 1920s. This is the Harlem Renaissance series. So I believe Nella Larsen only wrote 2 novels, but kind of to put this into more of a collection with some, special artwork. There's some other Harlem Renaissance classics that you can get in the same format. But long story short, I read Passing a few years ago, which is a novella, and I was just blown away. It's an incredible story. It's about this woman who is African American, but she passes as white. But she has another friend who also passes, and that friend has decided to actually live as a white woman, and that's just a completely different world, as you can imagine, and very risky for her as well, because that friend's husband is extremely racist. Passing's a really interesting novel because it starts with this really intriguing premise, but then it goes above and beyond. It gets into lots of reflections on marriage, and it kind of turns into a thriller towards the end, and the end is rather shocking. I really enjoyed it, and I do want to read it again in the foreseeable future, and I want to read Quicksand as well, which is more novel length. So I think this will probably be my American classic for the year. There are 1 or 2 other books that I also want to read from America, but I think, I was looking about for an American classic to read this year. I think it'll be Quicksand, and I'll probably reread Passing. Again, this was secondhand, but it's in great shape, and very happy to have it. Oops. This is a book that I picked up in person, so the other 2 I ordered from eBay, but this one is just a little find from a secondhand bookstore nearby. It's the Pelican History of England #6. It starts with James I. We get into Charles I and II, the Civil Wars. It goes all the way to 1714. I took a glance through it because history books are kind of hit and miss, but I was really pleased that it seems fairly succinct, and this is a time period I'm not really familiar with, so I think that would be really interesting. And I have gotten, I have a few very vague ideas of some of the things that happened in this time period after watching the movie about Cromwell, which was a terrible movie, but still kind of interesting. Anyway, hopefully to improve my knowledge of English history. All right, the next 3 books are a little bit more off the beaten path. This is a book I hadn't heard of till a friend recommended it, and well, neither of us has read it yet, but we are planning to read this for Serbia. We're reading Around the World, and this is the Dictionary of the Khazars. And there's several different editions of this, interestingly enough. There is a male edition, a female edition, and an androgynous edition. Don't really know the difference. I didn't pick this up for the edition that it is. I just actually kind of like the cover, and it was a good deal. And it's a curious book because it's got all these different sections, and you can read it in different orders. You can read it kind of like a dictionary or encyclopedia. I think you can jump around. Not sure exactly, but I think this will be a unique reading experience, and this is like one of those big classics of Serbia, so I think it'll be an interesting read for sure. Now, this is a book I've probably showed on the channel before. This is one I actually ended up repurchasing. This is Paradise of the Blind, and it is a Vietnamese novel. Hard to find Vietnamese novels in translation, and inevitably a lot of the works from some of these different countries that have come into translation recently tend to go over war or recent political events and catastrophes, and this is one of those books. So the last time I picked it up, I had read about half of it. I did find it pretty bleak, but I do want to try it again. I want to finish it this time. Not sure if I will really love it, but I think it could be important for my, education, just learning a bit about my heritage as well. So this will be the novel that we read for Vietnam. All right, last but not least, we have The Sickness Unto Death, a Christian psychological exposition for upbuilding and awakening. another mouthful from Søren Kierkegaard, and this is a book that my husband and I picked up for Lent because we like to read a book for Lent. This was probably a very bad choice, almost certainly, because it's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy going. Kierkegaard was not an easy writer at the best of times, but this is one of his books that's in particular a bit difficult to understand. Just the way he structures his sentences and some of the vocabulary he uses in the language, the logical statements, are kind of hard to follow. He was writing in response to popular philosophers of his day, including Hegel, who is also notoriously difficult to read. I have tried to just kind of keep going with it though, and not get too hung up if there's parts I don't understand, and I think I'm starting to get something out of it, but it is a slow read. He's going over about how he interprets despair, what is despair, interpreting just the different ways people can fall into despair, and sort of this ongoing tension that there can be, both within people that view themselves as very finite, and they don't think big, they don't think about the possibilities, they don't see themselves as spiritual beings, they just see themselves as material beings. Then there's like the other extreme of people that are very abstract thinkers, maybe to an extreme degree, and they really struggle with the day-to-day because they just are always chasing after the next thing. They're always dreaming about the big things, and maybe you find yourself on one end or other of the spectrum. I think I've been in both places at various times. I don't know if I'll be able to review this book, quite honestly, but look out for a rating on Goodreads because I do intend to finish it, no matter how long it takes me. So those are the books I bought. Trying not to go crazy here, but I'm excited to pick these up and continue reading the ones I've already started. Let me know what you're reading these days, if you have any exciting Easter plans, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.